Hopefully, yeah, you can see the screen. I just thought I might give you a bit of an introduction of who I am. So I'm Managing Director of Padua Communications, or a content marketing and PR agency that are based, I'm based down near the South Coast, right on the edge of the New Forest, but we've got a team that are based all over the place, including some people over in Brazil doing some stuff for us as well. And we work predominantly in the B2B space, helping businesses tell their stories, doing these four services: content, PR, marketing, and events. But we also basically work with consumer clients as well. And whenever we're trying to work and write stories for kind of content stuff, we're trying to make it so that it's a good blend of, even if it's very technical, jargon-filled content, that it's accessible and interesting to a wider audience. We are a teenager this month. We've been going for 13 years, and we've helped over 155 businesses over the past decade and a bit to help tell their stories. So some large, some small, all different industries. So yeah, all good stuff. If you think you need a bit of help with storytelling and some marketing support to PR, then come and have a chat with us. But that's what we do. So this talk and the giving bit, I just thought it'd be a really an interesting story to tell that hopefully a lot of people, sort of might get something from. It's really sort of within a business context, it's kind of CSR, or kind of, CSI, sometimes it's called. I think that sounds a bit like a crime scene. And it's basically about what you give, and what you give either personally or as a business or an organization, and what you can get from it. And when we're doing marketing, we're doing storytelling for a lot of businesses, they kind of, they're very, very kind of good on this is what the sales messaging is, but they don't necessarily always talk about what the organization is about, who the people are within that organization. And actually, sometimes that's some of the best content that you can create. So I thought maybe if I told my story, it might be a little bit inspirational. So Padua Communications is my business. And as I said, we've just become a teenager. And very early on, I suppose just because of the way that I've been brought up, but I wanted to be able to kind of do some CSR. I'd worked with different organisations in the past, and we'd done kind of, sort of fundraising, and I ran the London Marathon a million years ago, and just giving little bits back. But when I had my own business, I thought, right, actually, I really want to have this as a sort of fundamental thread, if you like, a layer that runs through kind of what we do. And we try to do, we're only a small team, but we try and do the best we can. And looking at the sort of CSR and CSI, it was kind of about, well, what do we want to do? And this story now, that is obviously 13 years in, has kind of really, in some ways, come full circle for me, which hopefully I'll explain as we go through. I'm more than happy to answer questions at the end, or put them in the chat as well if you want to, because I have learned a lot along the way. So hopefully it'll be fun and useful for you. So CSR, and kind of, what do we actually mean by it? It's the good stuff that an organisation gives back. And it's whether it's for a charity or whether it's back into the community. It doesn't always have to be money. It can be kind of, some time and teams getting involved with other grassroots organisations. But I would really recommend that everybody gives in some way, not just to get out of it, but I think you do get a lot more than you give anyway. So let me tell you my story. So meet Kathleen. I have to apologise for the teeny bopper things that she's gone ahead, but this was her hen do, a picture from her hen do, where we went to Orkney, and she was tarred and feathered, first time and last time, hopefully I've ever seen that. But this was Kathleen, my very, very dear friend. I say was because she passed away 3 days before my 40th birthday, which is just over a decade ago. And she was absolutely life and soul of the party, as you can tell, from Scotland, and was just absolutely beautiful person, beautiful. And so basically she passed away from motor neurone disease, and it was very aggressive and very, very quick. She went from being life and soul of the party to disabled. And, it was really, really horrible time. And at the same sort of time, we had set up, I say we, my husband is my business partner, we'd set up Padua Communications about probably 7 months before Kath died. And we'd been thinking about what do we want to do. And when she passed away, it was such a shock. Obviously, a very dear friend anyway, but she had 3 sons who were all under the age of 10. And it was only when we found out that, she passed away from motor neuron disease, and we'd realised how difficult that had been and how completely wasting it had been on her body and all the rest of it, that we really saw the full impact of the fact that those 3 boys had been carers, and they'd been carers from an extremely young age. And so it really made me think I want to see if there's something that we can do, sort of for young carers. That was our kind of big drive, first of all, for kind of the CSR side of things. So I remember saying to Jason, we need to find basically a carers organisation that's like for young people where we were. And at the time we were based in Surrey. And so we did the beautiful joy of looking at Google, and we came across Action for Carers Surrey, which actually has a young carers team and a group. So for the first few years of Padua Communications life, I volunteered for Surrey Young Carers. I have to say, I didn't have children at the time, and I think a lot of them were like, what the heck are you doing, giving up your time to hang around with kids? But I really, I felt so passionate about it. I just wanted to be there, and I wanted to do something. And I didn't necessarily want to just give money and it be like it's a tick. I wanted to kind of really be very involved. I think looking back now, because it sort of helped a little bit with my grieving and coming to terms with the loss of my friend, and having a bit of an understanding, or kind of feeling like I was really helping kind of ease that a little bit. So we'd come across Surrey Young Carers, part of Action for Carers Surrey, fantastic organisation. What they do is they basically help young people be young people, because what a lot of young carers are going through forces them to be much more adults than they ever should be at far too young an age. And so basically the activities that we would do with Surrey Young Carers would be things like taking them to the cinema, or taking them to Brighton for the day, or taking them camping, just so that they got a break and that they could relax and just be a young person. And really fantastic work, very vital. And I think even based in Surrey at the time, people sort of think, really, there can't be that many young carers, surely everybody's quite well to do. But all around the UK and around the world, there are young people who basically have to do sort of an adult's role. If you think about it, you've got sort of adults who might have addiction problems. We have a sort of massive issue with mental health and how that's seen. So all of those little things, obviously within that sort of family environment, can have a massive knock-on effect for young people. So this is what we did, and we basically volunteered. I volunteered my time, and I have to say I absolutely loved it. And one of the best things I did while I was volunteering was I volunteered at a Young Carers Festival. I have to say, and as a bit of a festival goer in my past, the Young Carers Festival is the best festival I've ever been to in my entire life. No alcohol, no drugs, not that I was a big partaker of those anyway, but it just good vibes, lots of outside entertainment, and it was held at a YMCA place down in Southampton, and it was absolutely fantastic. And just to see young people having a real break, not just for an hour or an hour and a half while they were off, but actually a whole weekend, was incredible. It was just absolutely amazing. So what did this experience kind of bring to me? And it was only really after I'd been to the Young Carers Festival, and I'd got to know some of the young carers a lot better because I'd spent a longer period of time with them, that it really made me reflect on life and kind of sort of how we see people around us, and sort of how very little of an understanding we have of what's actually really going on with people's lives. It also made me realise that actually it's quite good to go out and push yourself into different environments that you would never ever kind of sort of come across. And I have to say, from going to that Young Carers Festival and kind of meeting some of those young people, I was brought up down on the south coast. My family were kind of middle class. had a good education. They, sort of my mum and dad were together. They're still with us. I'm still very close to them. So actually to see the different environments that some of these young people kind of grew up in really was a bit of an eye-opener for me. And something that I think actually everybody should have an experience where they try and they go and see the world from somebody else's perspective. I think it apart from usually making you wiser and putting you back in your box, is actually a really, really fundamental push sometimes for change and for how you might kind of want to deal with future situations. So after I become a volunteer, my next step was, okay, well, actually, what else can I do? And so I became a trustee. That seemed to be my next step. This is before I now have a daughter, but becoming a trustee and a volunteer at the time was I was kind of able to manage that. So I became a trustee at City YMCA. The chief exec is somebody I went to university with, and she was looking for somebody to join the board who had PR and comms experience, because they knew that they were going to be going through some difficult crisis comms situations, and I was able to give them some free advice and some kind of consultancy and pointers in kind of how to handle situations. But again, I was with young people. It's something that actually resonated with me. I've always liked hanging out with young people. I think they force you to see the world in a different way. And before I worked in comms, I was a secondary school teacher. So I kind of get that perspective. Looking back now, I realise actually it's quite a telling thing about me that I would probably rather spend time with younger people than I would older, in all honesty. But I became a trustee at City YMCA, and again, learnt loads of new skills. So I'd worked in agencies, and I've worked in agencies for a very long time, and I've worked with large corporates, but I haven't actually ever really worked within a large organisation in the same sort of way that perhaps somebody who'd worked for, I don't know, Virgin or PepsiCo or something like that would be. So that whole kind of setup of, understanding what a board meeting is, how it all works, being a trustee was great because it meant that I got to get that experience, but I didn't actually have to, I was able to do it alongside running my business. It also gave me some more skills in the fact that I ended up becoming chair of one of City YMCA's sort of subcommittees. They were about to knock down a kind of old hostel that the young people use and build a purpose-built new building in the Barbican. And I was chair of that committee of kind of, sort of getting that all sorted and getting up and running. Something I'd never really done before, chairing a meeting. I'd kind of, I'm quite loud. Unfortunately, it can be, but I'd never actually been in that role beforehand. And I have to say, being a business owner at the same time, still fairly early on as a business owner, and also, holding my own chairing meetings and making sure that everybody kind of collaborated and felt like they were being listened to, was again a really great skill that came from my CSR life, if you like, that I could bring to my real world job. And so that chairing side of things, again, it became quite a natural thing for me to do, something that I'd got just by giving my time. And I think sometimes people don't realise that actually when you volunteer or when you kind of give your time in those sort of roles, that actually you get quite a lot back, quite a lot more back than you would think. So that leads us on to kind of where we are today. My business has moved on. We moved down to the South Coast, just on the edge of the New Forest. And a few years ago, I became chair of Fordingbridge Events Group, a new not-for-profit organisation that runs community events. We run Fordingbridge Festival, we run a Christmas event. We're doing it in a couple of weeks. Anybody would like to come? It's called Christmas Glow on the 11th of December. There will be more details online. And also we've done kind of Fordingbridge Culture Week. And so we've done different bits and pieces. And I have a really great team. The last couple of years have been very difficult because obviously we haven't been able to run events. And in fact, the Christmas event that we're doing in a few weeks is the first one that we've done for nearly 2 years because of the pandemic. But that whole thing of stepping up to the mark and basically saying, right, okay, we're going to set this organisation up, and this is what needs to happen to make it, sort of compliant and that actually transparent, so people can see how we work and what we do, is something that I feel I only was able to do because of the volunteering work that I had done over the previous few years. I just wanted to say here about that, if some people I think that they have to give loads of the time or that they have to give loads of money to get involved in those CSR projects, and actually that's not the case at all. I've found that quite a lot of organisations, and that quite a lot of them are charities where, you know, money is tight, particularly because they've been hit really badly because of the pandemic. Actually, quite a lot of the work that you can do as a business, depending on what you do, but is actually going in and helping with training and making sure that there are the volunteers or their staff are up to speed with kind of the latest thinking, whether it be for us with sort of marketing and social media, or whether it's, you know, sort of risk assessments, or kind of how any kind of legislation in electricity and power usage might be affecting a building or a business. So that that's quite a wide remit, and I would encourage, if you are thinking, what can I do, maybe have a look at some of the local groups around you and just see if there's somebody that you can help with kind of giving a little bit of advice and sharing that knowledge, because they will benefit, but also you will benefit as well. You'll be able to tell that story if you want to, or you will just feel that warm fuzzy glow for actually knowing that you've done something good in the world. So we, as we got involved with, down in Fordingbridge, where I live now, I also became trustee at Avonway, which is our local community centre. It's something that I've just stopped doing just because life is busy and the events group stuff is all picking up again and taking quite a bit of my time. But again, here, what we helped with was a little bit of training on sort of social media, and also helping kind of update their logo. So they actually had a logo with hex colours and actually a consistent brand as they were sort of communicating. So sometimes it can be quite a varied thing that you can give, or quite a niche thing that you can give, but that an organisation will really, really benefit from. And the thing that we are currently working with in the New Forest is a kind of more corporate partnership. So we're doing kind of I'm giving personal time with the events group, but also as a business, we now are a partner with the Minstead Trust, which is a charity that helps adults with learning difficulties, based in the New Forest, has different sites. And we are just in talks with them now about doing something for International Women's Day, about basically raising awareness of them as a charity, and it's their centenary year, but also the work that they do. And so there's a whole range of activities that we're going to try and run for next year as part of that. So it doesn't always have to be a corporate partnership. You can obviously give on a personal level, but I think if you can, see if you can, particularly if you run your own business or involved with a small organisation, see if you can actually, you know, sort of dovetail those things together. So our story and how it's kind of come full circle. This is my husband and my business partner, and he, a few years ago, had a spontaneous brain fluid leak, and so basically all that kind of giving and stuff that we'd sorted out, and by this point we had a small child. And we were in the situation where actually I was caring for him, and actually our little girl was kind of very aware. He was very, very poorly. He's okay now, I have to say, but he was very, very poorly for about 8 months. He was basically had to sort of stay mostly horizontal because otherwise he was in great pain. And actually, because we had got to know our local community, because we had volunteered and been involved with particularly the events group, but also the community centre as well, all of a sudden I had a team of people, a network of friends, not just within that sort of work environment, but within the kind of CSR umbrella, the kind of, the friends that were my committee for the events group, that just rallied round and were there and were absolutely fantastic. So I think sometimes when you're going through a situation, if you've kind of met connections through giving, you tend to have a shared understanding, a shared kind of way of seeing the world. You have a kind of, I think you meet other nice people who are kind of, sort of understand that there are others out there who are less fortunate and that could do with a hand. And so for me, that situation was a difficult one, but actually I had a support network that was just there because we'd done that work. And it was something that it was only with hindsight when I look back that I realized actually that a lot of those friendships had come from my giving and that work. So just some pointers for people who are thinking about, sort of possibly moving into doing some CSR or some volunteering or becoming a trustee. The first thing is be very aware of actually how much time you've got to give and how much time the organisation will take off of you. It is more time consuming than you think. But at the same time, if you are aware of actually how much time you can give, you can choose what sort of activity is going to work better for you and for your lifestyle. And I always think the best thing to do is to do that up front, because then you're not letting anybody down, so spend some time thinking, how much time have I actually got to give? If it's time you're going to give, how much flex have I got for the kind of when I might be able to do some things? Because actually you do need to, I think, spend a considerable amount of time, particularly up front, getting to grips with how an organisation works. And particularly when you're volunteering and you're not in there all the time, that does take quite a long time anyway, apart from the amount of time that you might be kind of giving of yourself. So have a think about that. It takes commitment. And I think, again, one of the worst things to do is to say, put your hand up and say, yes, I can do that, and then not really be able to follow through. So again, even if you're thinking, I can give some time, but I can only give some time for the next 4 months, that's fine, but you just need to manage expectations, because any organisation that you are working with, as long as they know that, they can work with it. So I would say communicate that, have a think about kind of, how long you want to be committed for. And the other thing is as well, is it's okay to give up, some CSR projects. You find that you actually, for some, they are quite long term, and you always have that. I still have a very much an affinity with Surrey Young Carers and City YMCA, even though I haven't done anything since my child was born and we moved, so I couldn't go to meetings and be involved with stuff like that. But have a think about kind of how committed, how long that commitment's going to be. If you think, well, okay, I want to do something for a year, that's absolutely fine. Just explain and communicate that to the organisation that or the charity that you're sort of dealing with. Try and find something that you have real affinity with. So hopefully from my story, you can see that there was a personal story that led me to working with kind of an organisation and a charity that work with young people, 2 of them, in fact. And actually then that having a very much a kind of local grassroots level kind of commitment was because I had a small person in tow, and so I didn't have as much time, and I needed to be able to work it, make it work for me. So I think, make sure that you're choosing things that you are going to feel passionate about, or that are going to kind of connect with you, because otherwise I think you could get to the stage where you resent it, and I think that would be a dreadful shame. So what I've learned over the past 12 plus years that we've been doing CSR kind of as a layer through our business and also my kind of personal strategy. Giving is a great thing because I think it encourages you to look at the world with fresh eyes and a fresh mind. It puts you into situations that you are maybe out of your comfort zone, but also that will force you to look at the world in a different way, will challenge your thinking, will educate your thinking. And I think that's a really, really great thing, because apart from the fact that you're developing as a person and growing as a person, you are also giving of yourself. And so other people are benefiting from that as well. So I think that's probably one of the key things that nobody really talks about, the fact that actually it just challenges the way that you see the world. It also, I think, encourages you not to judge or to assume. Now, I was brought up nicely, and I hopefully would never have done that necessarily anyway. But I think having seen and having worked with young people in particular who have gone through a particular way of life or kind of some sort of transformation, I think it has forced me to take a step back, to not just think, actually, that person's from that mold. You don't know what people are going through. You don't know where they've come from. And I think there's an awful lot of, I'll label that person and I'll put them in a box. And I think that is actually probably one of the saddest things about the human condition, is that actually people can be labeled and just forgotten, like they've got nothing else to give. And I think actually my giving has helped me to not judge and assume. It's not to say that I would try and do that, but I really try and think, okay, you don't know that person, you don't know what they've gone through, you don't know what they're going through right this second. This morning they might have had to deal with something. And a part of that has come from that Surrey Young Carers situation, for definite. It was only from working with young people like that I realised, actually, before this person goes to school, if they'd been late and I as a teacher had marked them as late, they may well have had to have fed their younger brothers and sisters, got them dressed, got them to school before they even got here, because they had a disabled mum, for instance. So I think that's a really, really great lesson. And also, I think particularly with the pandemic, there should be more care in the world. I think there was an awful lot of rubbish things in the pandemic. One of the really good things was, I think everybody was a bit more relaxed and understanding of other people's situations. And I wonder, when things start picking up, and obviously we're still in it, but whether we'll lose that. And I really hope that we don't, because I think if we all cared just a little bit more and everybody did just a little bit more themselves, we could do even more amazing things. So I would encourage everybody to try and get involved with CSR or CSI in some way, and just do your bit, because the impact that you could have could be absolutely massive.